Bedtime Stories for Kids, Sinbad the Sailor. Long ago, in the golden city of Baghdad, where merchants bargained under silk awnings and the scent of spices filled every alley, there lived a poor porter named Sinbad. Every day, he carried heavy loads on his back, sacks of grain, baskets of fruit, crates of copper, sweating beneath the scorching sun for a few silver coins. One afternoon, exhausted and aching, Sinbad sat down beside a tall, carved wooden gate. Through the open window above, he caught a whiff of roasted lamb, cinnamon rice, and rosewater. Music drifted out, gentle strings and soft laughter. "What palace is this?" Sinbad muttered. A servant overheard and answered kindly, "This is the house of Sinbad the Sailor." "Sinbad," Sinbad scoffed. "While I break my back for bread, he dines on gold and honey." A deep voice called from above, "Who speaks so bitterly?" Sinbad jumped to his feet. A tall man in fine robes appeared in the doorway. His beard was neatly combed, and his eyes were lined with years of sun and sea. "I am Sinbad," he said. "You seem weary. Come, eat, drink, and hear my story before you judge me." Too stunned to refuse, Sinbad stepped inside. The house was grand, marble floors, lanterns of colored glass, fountains that trickled sweet water. He was seated beside Sinbad at a long table. Fruit, meat, and wine were laid before them. "Tell me, porter," Sinbad said, "do you think I was born into this?" "Weren't you?" Sinbad asked. Sinbad smiled. "No, I was once a poor man, not unlike you. My fortune came through suffering, storms, and the mercy of fate." "Then how did it begin?" Sinbad leaned back in his chair, eyes distant. "With my first voyage." And so he began to speak, the lamps flickering softly as his voice carried Sinbad and us across the seas of memory. "In my youth," Sinbad began, "I inherited a modest sum from my father, enough for comfort, but not for adventure. Yet my heart longed for the sea." He took a sip of wine and leaned forward. "So I bought a share in a merchant ship, loaded with silks and spices, and set sail from Basra with dreams of profit and wonder." The porter, Sinbad, listened with widened eyes. "For weeks we sailed," Sinbad continued, "past emerald shores and strange beasts, until one day we came upon an uninhabited island, lush with trees and cool streams. The crew cheered. They dropped anchor and came ashore, unpacking their goods and lighting small fires for cooking." Sinbad lay back on the grass, sighing with contentment. "But then," he said slowly, "the ground began to shake. At first, he thought it was thunder, but the birds flew screaming from the trees. The water rippled. The soil beneath them heaved. It was no island," Sinbad said. "It was a giant sea creature sleeping for centuries, and our fires had awakened it." The beast bellowed. Its back cracked. The island began to sink. "Run!" the captain shouted. Men scrambled back to the ship. But Sinbad slipped. He tumbled into the sea. "The ship sailed without me," he said, his voice low. "I was left clinging to a piece of barrelwood, tossed like drift among the waves." For hours he floated, until at last, the current carried him to a real island, green and steep, with cliffs rising like blades. He crawled ashore, soaked and shaking, and fell asleep beneath a fig tree. When he awoke, he began to explore, and soon met a group of men carrying a royal palanquin. "Who are you?" they asked. "A sailor," Sinbad replied. Shipwrecked, they brought him before the king of the island, who ruled with wisdom and warmth. Sinbad was welcomed as a guest. He told tales of trade and the sea, and the king, impressed, made him overseer of the royal port. For a time, Sinbad said with a smile, "I lived well, perhaps too well, but fate, as always, had other plans." One day, a merchant ship arrived, and Sinbad recognized the vessel. "It was my ship," he said, "the one that had left me." He approached the captain, who gasped, "You live. We thought you were lost." Sinbad proved his identity and reclaimed his share of the cargo, now worth more than ever. "I returned to Baghdad with riches and stories, but the sea still called to me." Sinbad leaned back, his eyes gleaming in the lantern light. After returning to Baghdad, I could have rested. I had gold. I had comfort. But the sea has a voice, and it called to me again. So he set out once more on a second voyage, this time with a larger ship and crew, chasing new horizons. For weeks, the journey was smooth. Then we were caught in a storm, tossed for days before washing up on a strange island. At first, it seemed peaceful. Lush trees, cool water, and birdsong. But something was wrong. The trees were too quiet. The birds did not fly. And when night fell, the earth shook. From the forest came a giant, a monstrous man with one eye glowing red in his forehead. He moved slowly but with terrifying strength. He snatched one of our men, Sinbad said, voice low, and roasted him over a fire like a lamb. The sailors huddled in silence, too frightened to move, but Sinbad would not die without a fight. We waited until the giant slept, snoring like thunder. Then we heated 2 iron spits, crept forward, and plunged them into his eye. The giant howled in pain. The earth trembled. We fled blindly back into the jungle. Half the men were lost in the chase. The others, Sinbad among them, managed to steal rafts and float back to sea. They drifted until they reached another island, quiet and strange. There were no beasts, no giants, only silence, and something glittering in the sand. Diamonds. The entire valley shimmered with them. But before Sinbad could gather more than a few, a shadow passed overhead, and he looked up to see giant serpents, thick as trees, slithering through the cliffs. We had landed in the Valley of Snakes, and the diamonds were bait. He and his men hid under rocks, trembling as snakes hissed nearby. By dawn, the snakes slithered away to sleep in caves. That was when Sinbad heard a whoosh. Above them, massive chunks of meat fell from the cliffs. Merchants threw them down, he explained, hoping diamonds would stick. Then eagles would carry them up. So Sinbad, ever bold, tied himself under a slab of meat. And when the eagle came, it took him high away from the snakes, away from the valley. The merchants, stunned by his appearance, helped him down. And in his hands, he held more gems than any man had a right to dream of. I returned to Baghdad once again, rich, but not content. Sinbad refilled his cup and looked toward the fire, its soft glow flickering across his weathered face. I made 7 voyages in total, he said quietly, each more dangerous than the last. But let me tell you of the final one, the voyage that changed everything. By then, Sinbad was already a legend among sailors. He set off again, hoping not for gold or jewels, but for one last glimpse of wonder. This voyage took him farther than ever before. He passed burning islands with volcanoes like dragon mouths, cities carved into cliffs, and seas so clear you could see the stars reflected beneath. But one day, his ship was torn apart by a monstrous storm. He was thrown into the waves and woke up alone, once more washed ashore on an island. There, he was taken prisoner by a strange people who fed him sweet fruits and honeyed wine until his mind fogged and his body softened. They fattened me, Sinbad said grimly, not for kindness, but for meat. Realizing the truth, he forced himself to stay awake, to eat little, and when the moment came, he escaped in the dead of night. He wandered until he reached another kingdom, one of marble palaces and talking birds, where the king welcomed him kindly. Sinbad stayed for months, helping the kingdom prosper. He even married, growing content in a way he hadn't known before. But when his wife died suddenly, their customs demanded he be buried with her, alive, in a dark tomb. I begged, pleaded, he whispered, but they would not bend their law. He was sealed in a cave with only a jug of water and a loaf of bread. Each time another husband or wife died, the tomb reopened, and Sinbad took what food he could, surviving where others fell. I became a shadow, he said, but still, I would not die. One day, he followed a rat through a crack in the tomb wall, crawling through endless stone tunnels, until he emerged into sunlight. A merchant ship found him, half-starved, and carried him home. That was my final voyage, Sinbad said, and when I returned, I swore to rest, to honor life instead of chasing danger. He turned to the porter Sinbad. Now you see, My wealth was not free. I earned it with scars, with storms, and with survival. The porter bowed his head. Forgive me, great Sinbad. I did not understand. Sinbad smiled. Then come tomorrow, and the next. Each day, I shall tell you a new tale, and you shall share in my fortune, not in gold, but in memory. And so, the sailor who once challenged the sea spent his final days telling stories and reminding others that the greatest treasure is not what you carry home, but what you carry inside.